Hi, everybody. I'm Dan Wells. I write horror, fantasy, and science fiction, and I talk about games on the internet. Today, I want to talk about the Nomads for the Infinity RPG. Infinity is one of the settings that I love. It's a deep space opera, cyberpunk setting uh, based on or attached to a miniatures wargame. I genuinely don't know which one came first. Anyway, I love it. I think it's really cool. The Nomads in particular are my favorite faction. They are the first one that I bought when I started collecting the minis. They are my favorite faction to play in the game. I love them. The Nomads are like misfits and criminals and mad scientists all rolled into one. And this book, little tiny splat book, is kind of the perfect way of getting to know them and using them in your games. And it has a ton of information, all the setting and background information on who the Nomads are and how they work. And then, of course, a huge section on how to build characters that are from the Nomad faction and all the specifics. One of the things that you need to know up front about the Infinity RPG is that it is one of the crunchiest, most complicated role playing games that I have ever seen. And so that is absolutely a hurdle to get over. And if you are one who prefers minimalism or one who just doesn't want to have to deal with a lot of extra crunchy rules, then maybe the Infinity game is not for you. It is definitely for me. I like my minimalism. I also like my big crunchy cyberpunk stuff, and I'm very excited to have something like this. So let's get into it and talk about it. Now, I do not have a PDF. I should point out that it is Modifius policy as a company that if you have a physical book and you ask them, they will send you a PDF. I have not done that yet, even though that you can. So definitely, if you take advantage of that. If you've got these books, if you've got the physical ones, you can go and grab the PDFs from the company itself. And I don't know exactly how to do that, but I've been assured by their press people that it is possible. Anyway, um, so hooray. Let's talk about the Nomads. Now, the Nomads are unique in that they do not have a planet. They're called Nomads because they live entirely in spaceships. And they have three gigantic motherships that are constantly moving around through space. And each of those three motherships has its own personality and its own style and its own kind of unique look and feel. And we'll get into those in a bit. But first, and kind of key to the whole idea behind the Nomads, is that is why they don't have a planet. They actually started as prison ships, and the very first one, called Corregidor, was a prison ship that suddenly became defunded. And there's a lot of information here. All this background is in the book. But basically, there was a war leader or a couple of war leaders that said, "Hey, we're going to use this. We need to survive. We're a bunch of prisoners, a bunch of criminals that are now running the asylum. We're going to run out of money. We're going to run out of energy. We're going to run out of food and water unless we do something now." And so, through a combination of brutal pragmatism and very clever economics, they were able to turn this disastrous Left for Dead scenario into, a full nation, one of the core nations of the human sphere. And because of the way they started, and different people started joining after this one prison ship kind of took off. Then some other people came and were like, "Oh, you're this, you've broken away from the bad stuff. You completely disavow and don't permit any connection to Aleph, which is the AI internet. Imagine if the internet gained sentience and controlled much of society. That's what Aleph is. The Nomads hate that. The Nomads ignore that completely. They prohibit it, and they actively fight against it. And so they have their own little Maya net that they use. It's called Arachne or something like that. But they fight pretty hard against Aleph, and so that attracted a lot of other people, which is where we get the misfits and the mad scientists and the criminals coming in and saying, "Oh, you've built this kind of utopian rebel world in space. We want to be a part of that." And so now they kind of travel around. They're incredibly different from every other society in the human sphere. They actively, you know, try to foster that kind of attitude of individuality and freedom. And a lot of the times they're working on very bare bones stuff because they don't have a big planet with renewing resources and all of that. They kind of scrape what living they can from the harsh, unfeeling reality of space. But they do it through a combination of cleverness and absolute criminal behavior, which is great. So let's talk about the three. And here, inside front cover, you can actually see these are the three motherships. Okay, this one up here, Corregidor, that's the one that was a prison planet, and that really messes with my green screen if I throw this up there. Check that out. And then the camera refocuses. So we won't do that anymore. So Corregidor was the prison planet. They are today the absolute bare bones one of the three. They don't have a lot of spare resources flying around. In fact, many portions of their ship are in full zero G because they don't create artificial gravity through spin or through any other means, because they got to spend their resources on other things. So a lot of them function as mercenaries, and people throughout the human sphere will hire nomad mercenaries, primarily corregidor mercenaries, to go out and do their dirty work for them, and they're very, very good at it. Their primary police force is called the Jaguars, that is essentially made up of former gang members that used to be huge problems and now are not, because they have taken over as the police. The other second ship is called Bakunin, and the Bakunin, they are the misfits and the mad scientists more than anybody else. They have the most extensive genetic engineering in the human sphere. They create what's called pupniks, which are like are completely artificial people and creatures, that are kind of human but also kind of animal and also kind of just made up imaginary stuff. And they have chimeras, which are humans that have been given incredible new biological powers, or alternately pupniks that they've just granted incredible intelligence to. They have uplifts, where they have taken birds or apes or dolphins or pigs or cephalopods or whatever, and they have granted them intelligence. And that all started with the dolphins. There's actually the uplift cetacean program was part of an early pilot program that Bakunin ran to create pilots, thinking that dolphins and other cetaceans would take very naturally to the nature of 3D combat in outer space. And that program turned out to be so viable and so valuable that they expanded it into many other species. And so there's all of these uplifts and that have different animal backgrounds and differing layers of humanity, depending on how they are built. And all of those things, chimeras, pupniks, uplifts, all of that, there are full character creation rules for them. Pupniks, you really wouldn't want a character, but the others that are kind of more sentient, you absolutely can. Do you want to be an octopus person who's super smart and devious and only barely human? You can be. So all of that mad science bioengineering stuff, that's Bakunin. The third of the motherships is called Tunguska, and this is the one where all of the crime bosses came together and said, "Oh, you've built a big, awesome space society where we won't get spied on by Aleph all the time? Sweet, we're in." And so, whereas like the Corregidor ship is a repurposed prison ship. And Bakunin is this weird kind of, it describes it in the book as a neon carnival of misfits and mad science. The Tunguska ship was built from the ground up by incredibly powerful mafia dons and other underworld leaders to be this clean, polished, high class crime boss society. They've got the best hackers in the entire galaxy. They are unsurpassed. They've got incredible banks and financial information. They actually have a university called Outer. I can't remember what the U stands for, but it's OUT. Outer University of Tunguska. That's what it is. That is specifically intended for the children of criminals. If you are a crime boss, if you are in the submondo, if you are any of these things, and you want to send your children to school A, where you know they'll be safe from reprisal or, attack from other crime lords, and B, where you know they're going to get a proper education in how to launder money and do all those kinds of criminal things, then you send them to Tunguska. That's what the OUT is for. So that's what the three are. They have, incredibly differing levels of technology and differing mindsets and everything, but they fit together as a single unit, and they have lasted as a viable political entity much, much longer than anyone expected. They have a seat at the table when the human sphere leaders get together and say, try to decide big questions. The UN, so to speak, the Nomads are a part of that. Even though they are these kind of die-hard individualists who refuse to be like anybody else, either out of necessity or out of preference or to hide something, whatever their motives are, they have come together and they've managed to build this really cool society. So, hooray for that. I don't know what else I really need to tell you about the book, except I am going to point out this thing. There's a whole section on what's called social energy, chapter 3, and this is going to screw up the green screen if I put it any closer. This is already one of the most complicated role-playing games I've ever played, as mentioned previously. And social energy is a way of modeling an all-new system, and it doesn't work. It is impenetrable. It is largely useless. Pretend like chapter 3 is not there, and you will be happier. I have read through the entire section twice, trying to understand it, and basically I have returned to you with the knowledge that you don't need to understand it. It will add nothing to your game. I don't know what it's even there for. But let's talk instead about the character options, okay? Because there's a bunch of really neat character options. So every book in the line has a bunch of new character stuff. Character creation is complicated. It's a lot of fun, and there is an online character creator you can use. It is a couple of books behind, but it does have the Nomad information in it, okay? And so it uses a life path character creation system where you figure out where you came from and what your upbringing was like, what events happened to you as a child, and then you figure out your education, and then what events happened to you as an adolescent, and then you start getting into careers. And so each book adds these kind of specifically flavored events and careers and education tables for each faction. And the Nomad one is wild because it needs to include, humans who are absolutely regular humans, humans who have been, given this extensive bioengineering process, uplifts that are not human at all but look human. There's all these different things, and there are different event tables for all of them. There are different career profiles for all of them. And so there's a lot of neat things. So right here, there's the cat squads. There are wildcats, tomcats, and hellcats, which are kind of like the rapid response teams of Corregidor. And if you are going to be like a combat medic or a combat engineer or just someone who is going to get into the thick of things and solve a problem, even if that problem is just killing the other people. That's the cat squads. We've got clockmakers. We have the chimeras, which are those bioengineered people. There are hackers. If we go deeper into this, we can get the interventors, which are the special Tunguska hackers that are the best hackers anywhere. We've got those jaguars, which are like the gang member police that I talked about. Um, there's a lot of neat things. Praxis scientist. You want to be one of those mad scientists that builds the chimeras and does the uplifts and is a crazy genetic scientist. There you go. There's a huge gear section, so you can outfit yourself with all this crazy weird stuff that they've got. And then, of course, there's also, which I've already mentioned, there's the whole section on uplifts, which is an extensive section of how to build those. And then there are, where is it? Nope, still more uplifts. It's a lot more extensive. They have their own character things. So here, I love this one, the Star Swimmer. If you want to be one of those dolphins who was kind of granted higher level of intelligence and arms and hands and legs and stuff, so that you can pilot a starship and be like this incredible three-dimensional uplifted pilot, they've got that in here. I love this one. This career is just test subject. You were uplifted and granted sentience mostly as an experiment to see if they could do it. And then they did it, and they were like, yay, well, what do we do with this thing now? And they don't know, so they just keep you around to, like, feed you shampoo and see what it does and things like that. So you get to be the little bunny rabbit that they test cosmetics on, except you're a character in a role-playing game. The Morlock Groupa, that's another kind of bioengineered group. And then here we get into the bioengineering. There's a whole chapter on, and it's kind of structured like the gear. You want to have, different kinds of things. You want to be amphibious. You want to have, a bootleg bioengineering that doesn't work very well. You want to have boosted immune system or super jump or keen senses, or you want to be adapted to a specific environment. And they have all of these in here, and you can build those in from the ground up. A lot of those careers we looked at get some of these for free. And of course, they all have costs, so that if you are just a human from any other career, and you're like, well, I'm a hacker, but wouldn't it be great if I could jump 30 feet in the air? Then you can go and get the super jump biomod if you can afford it. So there's prices for all of this stuff. There's even a little section that talks about Animal Farm if you want to create just kind of bespoke pets. If you want to have a custom dog that is a dog but also can fly or also can, bond with you telepathically or whatever it is, a cat that can talk. There's all these different bioengineering options, not just for you, but for your pets and stuff. And then, of course, at the end, the final chapter is adversaries. If you are going to be fighting any of these things, and so a lot of the units, almost all of the units that are available in the minis game show up here. So you want to fight against Mobile Brigada, or the Alguaciles, or a Pupnik, or the Kriza Borax, which is like this crazy heavy infantry personal tank kind of a thing. Those are all in here. They've got a lot of stats for specific people, which may or may not be of any value to you. I've so far never used any of them. But the kind of generic NPCs, I need a Zero, or I need a Tomcat, or I need an Interventor that I can throw against these players. That's the big value there. So, Nomads. They are my favorite faction in Infinity, which is one of my favorite role-playing games. So, hooray. I feel like this whole week I've just got to talk about my favorite stuff. The Ents and Rohan, and then the Gamma Quadrant, the Dominion War, and now the Nomads of Infinity. This is Dan's favorite week of all time. Anyway, Infinity is a great game, and the Nomads are a wonderful faction within that game. If you like cyberpunk and or space opera, please check this out. Don't be scared away by me saying it's a complicated rule set. It's a complicated but very effective and fun rule set that you might very well enjoy playing. So, Nomads, check it out. I'm Dan Wells, and you are awesome.